Listen to the Tommy Schnermecker Show, live weekdays 9 to noon on CJAD 800 and CJAD.com.
The writer, lawyer, expert on international politics, Philippe Assouline. Good morning.
Hi, Tommy. Good morning.
Philippe, let's talk about what's happening in Syria first. Tell me about this new Russian involvement.
Yeah, I think it's kind of dramatic, and it's happened quite fast. The Russians, as we know, have always opposed Western policy, at least Western lip service to replacing Assad. They have very strong vested interest in Syria of two kinds, political and economic. And now, in the last 2 weeks, Russia has been making very aggressive moves. It's moved troops to Syria. It's moved fighter jets, and now it's bombing targets. It says it's bombing ISIS. French diplomats are saying it's not bombing ISIS, that it's bombing actually local rebels to protect Assad. But it's a very direct and aggressive involvement of Russia in the Middle East, apparently tolerated by the Americans. And this flies in the face of 70 years of American policy.
Now, how does it fly in the face of that policy? Does it look like the Americans are afraid of Russia?
I don't know about afraid. You know, this is an administration that's very hard to read. What they say and what they do, including the speech of the UN, there's often a very big disconnect. The Americans have had a policy since the 1950s, at least, of pushing back the Soviets, of trying to do everything in their power to maintain the Middle East an American sphere of influence. Now, they failed at doing that. The Soviets were very much entrenched in Syria, Iraq, other places. But now there seems to be this tacit toleration of it, this tacit agreement that the Russians can do this. Obama is protesting in word only, which makes me suspect it might even be some kind of agreement behind the scenes, despite the very heated rhetoric between the sides.
Now, who are the people that are being attacked by Russia? I think John McCain said that they were CIA-trained rebels who are being attacked by Russia. Is he correct?
Well, I'm not on the ground to tell you, but that is the report. There are different groups in Syria fighting. We spoke about this a bit last time. You have the local national rebels, which include some nationalist Islamists who want to establish a Sunni state in Syria. Then you have ISIS, which wants an international caliphate. And you have Hezbollah and Assad and Iran on the other side. The rhetoric of the Russians is that they're attacking ISIS to protect everybody. In practice, it seems they're actually targeting local rebels, which may present more of a threat to Assad because they will have the support of the West.
So as they're targeting local rebels, are they leaving ISIS alone?
This only started a couple of days ago. That's the accusation being made, yes, that they're leaving ISIS alone. So people on the ground said there's been bombing in Homs, the city, HOMS, that there have been civilians killed, that the targeting is almost exclusively of local rebels, which again present a threat to Assad's regime because they're supported by the West. They could potentially replace him, whereas ISIS nobody would ever accept. That is the accusation being made, that the Russians are actually targeting those people and not ISIS.
So if they're targeting those people, it looks like Assad is here to stay, right? I mean, with the help of Russia and with nobody trying to stop Russia, this is pretty good for Assad, isn't it?
It's excellent for Assad, and Iran is getting a windfall that will strengthen Assad considerably too. On the other hand, I don't think the Sunnis are going to take this easily. They've lost 100 or more thousand people, perhaps 200,000 people. The emotional attachment to this fight in the Sunni world in general is very high. I don't think the Sunni countries supporting the rebels and ISIS are going to take this lying down. So I don't think this fight is going to end anytime soon unless there is a clear victor. I don't think Russia will have success imposing Assad unless it's through extreme violence, or there is some kind of a plan, which Obama hinted at transition. Now, if all the sides can find somebody they agree on, that's going to be quite miraculous. I don't expect that to happen easily either.
Now, tell me about the role of Saudi Arabia. What does Saudi Arabia stand to gain or lose in this?
So what you have in essence in the Middle East is an inter-Muslim Cold War. Whether it's because of religion or power, or actually, in my opinion, both, you have proxy wars between Iran and Saudi Arabia, going back at least to the Iraq War, where the Shiite power Iran and the big Sunni power Saudi Arabia are fighting over control of various governments. Now, the Arab Spring put everything into turmoil, and now Syria is the big unresolved case, and the Saudis are supporting, it seems, ISIS and local Sunni rebels, where the Iranians are supporting, through Hezbollah, their militia, it's more of an army, they're supporting Assad and all the massacres
now, wait a
on his
second.
people.
Philippe, did you just say that the Saudis are supporting ISIS?
Well, that's the accusation, that the Qataris, the Turks, and the Saudis are supporting ISIS, not at home, obviously, but abroad. And this happens a lot in the Middle East. You have, for example, Hamas is fighting ISIS in Gaza, or groups that claim to be ISIS, Salafist groups in Gaza. Then the Sinai, they work together against the Egyptians. So you have this murky set of shifting alliances. And the impression is that whether it's tacit or overt, there is support by the Sunni powers for ISIS. This is actually what Russia has been accusing the Arab states that are allied with the United States of doing.
Now, Canada sells military equipment to Saudi Arabia. Is there any chance of that military equipment ending up in the hands of ISIS?
It's a good question. Is there a chance? Absolutely. This is the big problem that keeps happening in the Middle East. You make an alliance with one group that is less bad than the other groups, and it turns out that then when the strategic situation has changed, those weapons end up in the wrong hands. This is bound to happen. In theory, the powers supporting the Sunni side or opposing Assad are meant to be supporting only the nationalist rebels, the FSA, for example, the Free Syrian Army. In practice, it's almost certain that there is support for ISIS, if not directly, that indirectly the weapons end up in those hands.
Now, the Syrians are saying that, in fact, the Syrian government sources are saying that, in fact, Russia is fighting all rebel groups. Are they telling the truth?
So, again, this is a new operation, and I would not doubt that Russia would attack ISIS positions, to make it convenient for itself, either for how this operation is perceived or on the ground when needed. It's definitely attacking the groups that are a threat to Assad. Russia has an interest in maintaining Assad's regime for a number of reasons we can get into. And Assad himself, this is going to be a bit shocking, but Assad himself, which means with the agreement of Iran, has himself had a tacit agreement with ISIS, supposedly his biggest enemy, to both of them not attack each other head on, but attack the local rebels instead, the nationalists. Because again, if there is any viable alternative to Assad's regime, and we can debate whether it's viable at all, but if there is any viable alternative, it's going to be the local nationalist rebels, which include Islamist groups as well, by the way.
Your questions for Philippe Assouline, an expert on international politics. A number of questions for you. This texter saying, I heard Israel is the cause of all the problems in the Middle East. If we ended the Israeli issue, would there be peace and happiness in the Middle East, or is it a lie?
Well, I think it's a self-evident lie. I don't think Shiites and Sunnis slaughtering each other in Yemen, in Iraq, in Syria, or the Muslim Brotherhood fighting with the Egyptian army, tens of millions of people, have anything to do with Israel. You could remove Israel tomorrow, and if anything, it would make it worse because you'd have one other battleground.
Marty says,
the Middle East,
yes, go ahead.
Sorry, the Middle East does not know peace, sadly. It is not a place where peace is the default situation. It is a place, unfortunately, where war is, or some kind of friction is the default situation. So to blame it on Israel is really, really to misunderstand completely what's going on.
Your questions for Philippe Assouline, you can text them to 514-800. International politics expert Philippe Assouline on the line with us. If you have any questions for him, 514-790-0800. Text your question, your comment to 514-800. This listener wants to know what's happening to Christians in the Middle East. He understands they're being ethnically cleansed. Why is the world, the UN, and the EU silent on this war crime?
I think that's an excellent question, and it is tragic to watch. The only country really where Christians are safe right now in the Middle East is Israel, perhaps with the exception of Lebanon. There was a lot of persecution of Christians under the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt for that year where they were in power. Now things have stabilized, but I think a lot of people left. I think it's a question of, unfortunately, of political correctness and of people not caring enough. You have veritable genocide going on in a number of places. and nobody seems to be lifting a finger. And it's all the more alarming when you pay attention to what Barack